Good afternoon, Delta. And everyone else. I'd like to thank the administration, Mayor Friday Ellis, Chancellor Esters, the faculty and student body for extending an invitation to share this ceremonial event with you, leaving you a few words of which will hopefully inspire you, challenge you, and calls for a moment of reflection. I was recently asked, "You giving a speech? I never heard you speak before." I don't know if you've heard this before, but I've been told I have a face for the radio, a voice for silent movies, but here I am giving a speech. A few years ago when I taught Bastrop High School, one of my students came annoyed when I kept reminding them of lessons that they should have learned. The student replied, "Mr. Wright, why are you always bringing up old stuff?" I joked back with him. I said, "Well, that's what they pay me to do. I'm a history teacher. I bring up old stuff." But it truly is an honor to be here today, and I'm grateful for the task at hand. On this last day of Black History Month, we take a few moments to focus on the arts, and not just the end result, because the story behind the brilliance of Black excellence often exceeds the quality of the work itself. On January 20th, 2009, one of the greatest voices to ever strike a tune stepped up to the microphone to an audience of thousands along the National Mall in Washington, D.C. It was a typically cold January morning, and the stage was set. The masses were on their feet, and the dignitaries of the hour were in their place, ready to receive what will become a momentous victory for African-American vocal abilities in the history of America. The Queen of Soul, Aretha Franklin, bellowed out a beautifully crafted rendition of "My Country, 'Tis of Thee," and moved the nation, if not the world, with her repetitive "Let it, let it, let it, let it," as bells rang, ushering in the new President of the United States, a Black man. 4 years prior to Franklin singing for the President of the United States on the steps of the U.S. Capitol, she received the Presidential Medal of Freedom from President George W. Bush and was lauded for her lifetime of achieving and helping to shape our nation's artistic and cultural heritage. What measure of a woman of color that Presidents Jimmy Carter, Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, and Barack Obama would find her unique, artistic, and a great credit to the American artistic and cultural heritage. 70 years prior to Ms. Franklin singing on the steps of the U.S. Capitol, another Black woman set the stage for the many Black singers to come after her, lifting their voices. Marian Anderson, an internationally celebrated singer, was denied an opportunity to sing at the Constitution Hall in Washington, D.C. when the Daughters of the American Revolution refused her the stage. It took pressure from First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt to get her access to the steps of the Lincoln Memorial to sing before thousands, the press, and live radio broadcasting. And like Franklin, who sang 70 years later, she too sang "My Country, 'Tis of Thee." On January 27, 1991, in Tampa, Florida, the National Football League would invite a 27-year-old Black singer to kick off Super Bowl 25 by a performance of the national anthem. Whitney Houston's epic performance of the Star-Spangled Banner was celebrated around the country, and the recording of it still played at public events in lieu of singers. The Star-Spangled Banner, "My Country, 'Tis of Thee." These are two iconic anthems of the American spirit and the American experience. There's been much debate about the nature of these songs as they attest to a utopian version of America, one in which many never get a chance to experience. One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. When Anderson and Franklin sang about a sweet land of liberty, and Houston sang about a flag that stood even after the bombs were bursting in air, were they speaking about a real place that they even call home? Could millions of Black Americans hear their voice and believe that this was possible? Dr. Martin Luther King once spoke of a dream, the dream of America, where one is judged by the content of his character and not merely by the color of his skin. Skin color. We're about the only nation on the planet that still characterizes its citizens based on the color of skin. We create boxes on application forms that often bar entrance into schools, institutions of employment, and complexes of housing. Checking a particular box could mean the difference between consideration of a job or an apartment lease. Is this the America that Anderson, Franklin, and Houston sang of? Why did presidents and the NFL prefer black singers to sing these national anthems before millions? Is it to demonstrate diversity? To symbolize that we are no longer a racist country and we've arrived at a place where there is liberty and justice for all? While My Country 'Tis of Thee and the Star-Spangled Banner may celebrate the America that could be, they often fall short of addressing the recipe for which to bake that cake. For over 100 years, black musicians and singers have exercised their First Amendment right to speech and expression, their chosen medium, their voices. We've often been reminded that violence to achieve liberty and justice often ends in unnecessary bloodshed and an unlikely conclusion of the original objective. In our celebration of African American entertainment and the arts, we take a look at how ingenious black writers and singers have been in using their voices to contribute to the fight for justice and equality. In the year 1900, James Weldon Johnson, a school principal and an accomplished musician, wrote a poem for his 500 school children to perform in honor of President Abraham Lincoln, his birthday. He entitled the poem, "Lift Every Voice and Sing." His brother John took his poem and set it to music, for which the kids sang. Since 1900, it has been passed on through successive generations and labeled the Negro National Anthem. Interestingly, America had a black national anthem 12 years before America had a national anthem. It brings into question the relevance of the song and the strength of its lyrics to spread throughout the country, capturing the hearts and minds of African Americans in the early 20th century. At its core, James Weldon's poem is a protest song. However, it offers a problem and a solution in one, a feat that even Francis Scott Key's poem doesn't do. It's also a song about victory. Being such, would this be a preferred anthem played before baseball, basketball, and football games? What victory? Johnson wrote about the victory over America's past sins of prejudice, racism, slavery, torture, human and sex trafficking. These are touchy subjects in modern discourse, as many in the ruling classes prefer to erase these truths from textbooks and classroom curriculums. America's ugly past is deeply rooted in its foundation as a nation. It's not just the past, for it currently is alive and well today, an ever-present cancer that won't go away just because we choose to look the other way or deny its existence. Nearly every generation since James Weldon Johnson has taken up the torch and lifted their voices. Within each was a writer, a singer, an orator who used their talents to paint a picture that would not necessarily be included in one of Mr. Frank Kelly's collections, but nonetheless had deep meaning, and as it said, a picture is worth 1,000 words. For these black intellectuals, 1,000 words takes place of one bigger picture. In 1930, a Jewish teacher was alarmed by photographs he saw of 2 black men being lynched in Indiana. He sat down to write a poem which described what he felt about the images. His poem is the famous Strange Fruit, which was later put to music and passed on to a nightclub owner. At the time, a popular nightclub singer, Billie Holiday, a black woman, was chosen to bring life to this song. Southern trees bear a strange fruit, blood on the leaves and at the root, black bodies swinging from a southern trees, strange fruit hanging from the poplar trees. The song was personal to Holiday, as her father died as a result of health complications. The hospital wouldn't admit him because he was black. To her, that was just as much as a hanging. It did not come without consequence. Strange Fruit, like Lift Every Voice and Sing, is a protest song. As popular a songstress Holiday was, not every white patron who listened to her in whites-only clubs were pleased with the lyrics. Of course, the lyrics were as brutal as the atrocities they depicted. However, even in modern America, a critical race theory in the 1930s was just as damning. Actions in the past that many would care to distance themselves from. And because Holiday refused to stop singing these songs, of which whites at the time classified as devil's music, they devised a plan to silence her. Holiday was a drug user, and they wanted to prove that drugs makes black singers sing these types of lyrics. They framed her with heroin and had her arrested in jail. After her return to the stage, she later began using the drugs again, and in her demise, her life ended the same way her father's did, with the denial of treatment in a hospital. The 20th century, especially the Jim Crow early 20th century, was filled with lynchings, torture, and denial of human rights for African Americans. Before the century would end, Time magazine designated Strange Fruit as the song of the century. Interestingly, Holiday took the heat for the lyrics when a Jewish man wrote the song. However, it took the brilliance and creative voice of a black singer to bring it to life. Strange Fruit was a protest song. Billie Holiday had a song in her heart, a protest to make. She lifted her voice and sang. But the bigger picture still remains today. Just because we try to deny lynchings, rape, torture, and human trafficking happen in this country doesn't mean it didn't happen. In our attempts to forget it ever happened, we only prolong the healing that the country needs. In the 1940s, a series of psychological tests were given to black children, famously known as the doll tests. Kenneth and Mamie Clark, two black psychologists, used these tests as an investigation to how black children viewed themselves. The children being tested had to choose between white dolls and black dolls as one that was the preferred doll to play with. The theory formed from the experiment was that as a result of the racist society the kids lived in, they preferred the white dolls over the black dolls. The black dolls represented negative energy, and the white dolls were something that stood for positivity. To answer this decades-old problem, in 1968, another black musical genius responded to the negativity of the day with a song that is still a powerful anthem. Say it loud. I'm black and I'm proud, wrote Grammy Award winner James Brown. I worked on jobs with my feet in my hands, but all the work I did was for the other man. Now we demand a chance to do the things for ourselves. We're tired of beating our head against the wall and working for someone else. Say it loud. I'm black and I'm proud. Racial tensions were high in 1968, especially after the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Riots broke out around the country, and there was a political and cultural shift in America. It resonated within the lives of many African Americans who wanted to break free the chains of oppression and self-hate, assimilating and integrating into society, a country that didn't give us an opportunity to enjoy life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. James Brown, like James Weldon Johnson, focused on the hope that the present has brought us. Known for his creative groove and fantastic stage performances, the Godfather of Soul will eventually not just be an entertainer. His music and politics met at a crossroads, and he, like the others, used his voice to speak out against the injustice of his time. Another generation, same fight, same struggle, same duty to uphold, a torch lifted to pass on to the next generation. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea, wrote James Weldon Johnson. Say it loud, wrote James Brown. On May 25th, 2020, when most of the world was masked because of COVID-19, racism's ugly head unmasked itself again in Minneapolis, Minnesota. 46-year-old George Floyd was arrested by police officers. And during the altercation, Officer Derek Chauvin, a white man, knelt on Floyd's neck for 9 minutes and 29 seconds. Floyd was handcuffed face down on a hot pavement. The incident was captured on video, and the world had another view of how America still treated some of its citizens. A nation that adopted the Geneva Convention's provision. Article 13 of the Geneva Conventions declares that prisoners of war must at all times be humanely treated. Any unlawful act or omission by the detaining power causing death or seriously endangering the health of a prisoner of war is in his custody is prohibited and will be regarded as a serious breach of the present convention. And that's how we deal with prisoners of war as soldiers. You would think we would do better with civilians. Humanely treated. George Floyd can be heard in the recording over 20 times stating, "I can't breathe." Unfortunately, the officer didn't think his protest was relevant in his response. It takes a lot of oxygen to talk. James Weldon Johnson wrote, "Stoning the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died. Yet with a steady beat, have not our weary feet come to the place for which our fathers sighed." Racial tensions in the midst of a global pandemic were at an all-time high. There were no video recordings of the strange fruit hanging from poplar trees. There were no cell phone video posts on social media of the riots across the nation in 1968. However, there were plenty to share in 2020 in the wake of George Floyd's demise. Another generation of black voices answered the call. And on July 12, 2020, Atlanta rapper Dominique Armani Jones, better known as, oh, come on, students, Lil Baby, offered the song The Bigger Picture. The song peaked in the top 10 of Billboard's Top 100. In his lyrics, he commented on the systemic racism and police brutality in wake of the death of George Floyd. Now, I'm no rapper. I sing pretty good, but I have yet to master the art of rap, so I pay homage to those creators who call themselves the MCs. So I'll just say these lyrics if you don't mind. Baby says, "They know that we are a problem together. They know that we can storm any weather. It's bigger than black and white. It's a problem with the whole way of life. It can't change overnight, but we gotta start somewhere. Might as well go ahead, start here." The voice of another generation, still singing the same tune, still lifting their voices to sing. From James Weldon Johnson to Billie Holiday to James Brown and now Lil Baby, singing or rapping in the voice of his or her generation, protesting the same systemic problems America still lives with. The cancer that will not go away, and yet we still attempt to carry on as if it doesn't exist, hoping the problem will just go away on its own. Through every generation of protests, we hear the words of "lift every voice and sing, and we shall overcome." Deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. Out of the gloomy past, till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright star is cast. So what is the bigger picture? It's great to know the names of black artists, musicians, and entertainers. It's great to pause 1 year in February to showcase what black people are capable of doing. Some still question the relevance of Black History Month. Celebrated black actor Morgan Freeman once said in an interview with Mike Wallace that Black History Month is ridiculous. "You gonna relegate my history to a month?" he asked. He said, "There is no need for black history as an island. Black history is American history," he said. His recipe for ending racism is to stop talking about it. He suggested that we eliminate the labels, white and black, and refer to each other by name and as fellow Americans. The fallacy behind such suggestion is part of the bigger picture. Whitney Houston's Star Spangled Banner and Aretha Franklin's My Country 'Tis of Thee spoke of exactly what Morgan Freeman described, the utopian version of America, one that we strive to get to, but one that we are far from obtaining. We shall overcome someday. That day is not today. But as Lil Baby said, we got to start somewhere. Might as well go and start here. We don't get to that day of overcoming by ignoring the problem. Black History Month is necessary, but it must evolve. Morgan Freeman was correct. Black history is American history. There would be no American history without black people. White and black lives are so intertwined that it's inherently impossible to just magically separate them. The bigger picture is that we are more alike than we are different. The bigger picture is that the only Americans see each other as races and colors. The bigger picture is that foreigners look at us all the same, Americans. When I served in the Marines, we made a stop in Hong Kong. One night on the town, it was myself, a black man, a white guy, a Mexican guy, and a Chinese guy. We attempted to enter a nightclub, but there was a sign on the door that said, "Natives only." The Chinese Marine that was with us couldn't obtain entrance either because of his ethnicity. To them, he was an American too. On another trip, we traveled to the island of Seychelles. It's a small island on the eastern seaboard of the African continent. There, the natives referred to me and the other black Marines as, "You Yankee black man." We were not accepted. To them, I was an American. It's bigger than black and white, Lil Baby wrote. Black History Month has to be more than a celebration, but a time to assess, evaluate, and work towards solutions. Town hall meetings, workshops, seminars, symposiums would be a good path forward as an annual checkup on the nation's cancer. Will this cancer kill us, or will we work towards treating it and completely removing it? Aside from Black History Month, we can all work towards treating the cancer by each one of us being Americans with Americans. Black people want the same things that white people want: a chance at life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Take away the barriers, take away the roadblocks, change the perceptions, correct the misconceptions. We want the chance to be Americans. We want the chance to be great too. We want to own land. We want to be more than ball players and entertainers. Yes, we too want to be architects, engineers, and have the chance to use our God-given talents to participate in the process of building a better world for ourselves and our posterity. The bigger picture is that America that is good for black people is an America that's good for white people too. But it can't be if it picks sides. When we win gold in the Olympics and stand on that podium to the tune of the national anthem, we win the gold in the name of the country. Just imagine how far on task we'd be if just 60 years ago we'd been given the opportunity to compete without opposition. Why did it take so long for Simone Manuel to prove that black women could swim? All those years of denying African Americans access to public pools cost America. It cost whites, and it also cost blacks. For when you denied access to public schools to blacks, you also denied public access to pools to whites as well. Why did it take so long for Dominique Dawes and Simone Biles to prove that black women could balance themselves on a beam and that Mary Lou Retton or Nadia Comaneci weren't the only Olympians to glorify? Denying African Americans girls access to proper gymnastic training cost America. It costs whites and blacks alike. How does it cost whites? Black people are good at what we do. Black people are good at what white people do too. We've shown many times, give us the opportunity and we'll show you real competition. Muhammad Ali and Mike Tyson were the heavyweight champions of the world, not because they fought other black fighters, but because they went toe-to-toe with the best. You want to be in that ring with the best, and you should feel unfulfilled if you win a trophy or a belt knowing you didn't win against the best players or the best teams in the game. Denying black Americans a chance to compete in sports, business, entertainment, or any other profession costs Americans. Let's cut the costs and start doing it the right way. As Lil Baby said, we gotta start somewhere. Might as well go and start here. We are in this together. Demand to be treated with respect. Don't ask for it. Demand to be treated as Americans. Don't seek permission. And until that day comes, we must continue to lift every voice and sing. We must continue to use our brilliance and creativity to get the message out that there's still work to be done. The race is not complete, and just because we put a black man in the White House, there are still glass ceilings to break. We must continue to lift our voices. We must continue with every generation to do what we can to bring about that new day we envision. Samuel Francis Smith may have written "My Country, 'Tis of Thee," but there's a certain sense of word "my" and an entitlement that should have been felt by all Americans when Aretha Franklin sang it at the inauguration of President Barack Obama. Tears fell from the faces of hundreds in Grant Park in Chicago the night the Obamas took the stage when Senator John McCain conceded the race elevating a black man to the highest office in the country. To those tears came that sense of entitlement. It was their country. Francis Scott Key may have written the Star-Spangled Banner, and Colin Kaepernick may have taken a knee when it was sung, but no one took a knee when Whitney Houston lifted her voice. It was an impossible thing to do. So in that moment, despite the Americans' conditions, for in that moment we felt that she was singing because of the brilliance of her voice and the energy of her delivery. Her rejoicing rose high, high as the listening skies. Today we celebrate African Americans in entertainment and arts. We celebrate black achievements on canvas like those of Mr. Frank Kelly, and in vocal pursuits like those of Johnson, Holiday, Brown, and Lil Baby. Let us keep painting, singing, writing, rapping, and working to bring about liberty and justice for all. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun, let us march on till victory is won. Thank you.
That was good.